Hi there. My name is Shiva. I am a first degree black belt from the Netherlands. Today I'm delighted to be joined by our Dutch Grandmaster, Peter Sanders. Peter, welcome to the show.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much for your time.
You're welcome.
So I just wanted to, so this interview is going to be about you and about Taekwondo and what you think that Taekwondo should be and what it is at the moment. So could you please first of all tell us your history of learning and teaching martial arts?
Yes, I can. I started training Taekwondo in 1967 at the Odo Kwan Taekwondo School. Most new clubs at that time were named Odo Kwan. So the school of my way. That's what General Che introduced, the Odo Kwan at that time. Uh, I started to train Taekwondo there, and the first trainings were every day, just long stance, front punch, again and again through the hole. That's it, nothing else. So after 2 weeks, you could learn something else. But basically, that was it. And the reason I went there was because I get my ass kicked by three 10-year-old boys. I was 10-year-old too, and so I wanted to do martial arts, and my mother didn't allow me, but I went anyway, so I could do a couple of free lessons, but then I had to pay. But I was 10 years old, so I had no money. So I asked my mother, and I really loved it, and blah blah blah. And then she said, "Well, okay, you know what, you can go." So I went there to this taekwondo club, and I started taekwondo. But after a while, I stopped because we planned to move to another city. The moving took a little time, so for a while I didn't train. But then we moved to the other city, and there I started taekwondo again uh, until today. And well, first I was only taekwondo for me. I love it a lot. It's my number one martial art, I think. And but later on, I learned about other martial arts, Korean martial arts like Hapkido. So at that time, there was a lady called Angela Mao, Lady of Hapkido. She was very famous. It's these old movies. You remember where people talk faster than their mouth moves. So the very old movies, but it was fantastic. So I started Hapkido at that time, and a couple of years later, when I visited Korea, I started with the Kong Musul, so Special Forces Martial Arts, and that's basically how I grew into in martial arts.
So, considering the fact that you have actually mastery in several martial arts by now, what is it about Taekwondo specifically that keeps bringing you back? I mean, you're obviously a grandmaster, you reached the pinnacle of your career as a Taekwondo instructor and as well as a practitioner. What is it about Taekwondo that you like so much?
Well, probably one of the facts is that I started with Taekwondo. Of course, it was my number one, my first martial art. Uh, then I met General Che, who is a person that really touched my heart like nobody else did. It was fantastic to meet this man, to work with this man. He came into a room, into a hall, this 1 meter 60, I believe, not even 160 centimeter small person, but he had the respect of the whole hall. That's fantastic. The moment he came in, and and basically Taekwondo. What I love a lot about Taekwondo is uh, all the knowledge you can find in the encyclopedia. Everything you can think of, up to the millimeter, is in there, and that's something fantastic that nobody had done in that time, and still up today. I cannot imagine any other martial arts doing it the way he did it so many years ago. So basically, like I say, it's an all-round martial art. One time, General Che told me to stop with Hapkido. So I asked him, why, General Che? Yeah, because everything is in Taekwondo. And I believed it was, and I still believe it is, but basically I told him, well, I love it a lot, so it's a little different way of training, etc., more self-defense. So, and then he said, well, okay, then it's okay. So I could I could stay there. So
So, what is the history of Taekwondo within the Netherlands, and how were you involved in shaping Taekwondo to where it is today?
well, I came into the first years you only train, so you don't care about organizations, whatever. In Holland, we had first the Budenbond Nederland. So that's basically an organization. Now, first, let me tell. First, Taekwondo was part of Judo and Jiu-Jitsu and the Judo Bond Nederland. That's basically how it started. Later, it got its own identity because it became very popular into the Budo Bond and later to the Netherlands Taekwondo Association, the NTA. And that's where we did for many years, compete and train and teach. It's fantastic. It was a nice time. But then there came some politics within ITF Taekwondo in the Netherlands. And then Taekwondo split into the NTA and the Belangengroep, ITF Belangengroep Netherlands. At that time I was a member of NTA and I trained with Kawamala in Eindhoven, Taekwondo Kawamala. At one time they planned to go to join the WTF, the Taekwondo Bond Nederland, with the agreement that they could train and teach Taekwondo as long as they want. So no changing into WTF style. So, and I went with the club where I trained. I followed my teacher to the Taekwondo Bond Netherlands. But after a while, I still, I'm ITF in my heart. So I went back to ITF and I stayed there. And then had some seminars with General Che. And then General Che asked me, can you please, because we had a very close connection, can you please go to the Taekwondo Bond Netherlands, so the WTF organization in the Netherlands, and try to make one organization ITF WTF style. So what I did, at that time there was an election for general secretary for the Taekwondo Bond Nederland. So I applied and I wrote a letter and we had this election and I had to present myself and I was chosen unanimously as a general secretary for the WTF in the Netherlands. So I did that for a couple of years. I did my best and try to make it one organization, which, succeeded quite good. But in the end, it turned out that the WTF didn't allow us. So we got a letter from Mr. Eun Young Kim, the president at that time of WTF, and he says, no, it's not allowed. So at that moment I said, okay, then I quit, I stop, I go back to ITF, and I stay with ITF. So that's basically what the history of my ITF in the Netherlands is. And then when General Che died, before he died, he asked me to stay with his son, Grandmaster Che Junghwa. So I did for a couple of years. However, for some reasons I don't want to talk about, is one time I chose to leave him, to not join him anymore because of political reasons. After we started to bring ITF back to South Korea, that's the dream of General Che. It was the dream of General Che to bring his martial arts back to South Korea. For that, I visited the embassy of South Korea in Brussels many times to talk about the possibilities, to show them what General Che was. I brought the encyclopedia, everything we discussed there. People were very enthusiastic about it. I wrote letters to the president of South Korea, so not the president of the Taekwondo, but the president of South Korea, that why they didn't let General Che come back to South Korea, because he fought for Korea in the Korean War. People say he's a North Korean. No, he was born in the North Korean part of South Korea. There was only one Korea. There was no North or South, and he fought for his people. So, but in the end, they didn't accept this. So years later, with Master Oh Chang-jin, our current president, and Zibi Crook, we started ITF HQ Korea.
Okay, wow. Shall I ask you a provocative question without going into the details of the politics? How does all of these politics and disagreements, what do you think about that? How does it make you feel?
Well, basically, I always think about we can agree to disagree. We don't need to think the same. The fact that people think different is what made our world grow and evolve. So if everybody agrees, then we would be robots, all of us. So basically, I don't care if we don't agree about things. But what I do care about, and I really cannot cope with, is treating people incorrect. They give us their I say it in English, their trust, and we promise to help them, to be there for them, etc., etc. But I hate politics where people get hurt because of those reasons. And maybe because I'm Dutch, we're a small country but with a big mouth. If I see these things happen, I have to say something about it. I cannot keep my mouth shut. So that's sorry, but that's who I am, you know. And so a lot of these politics, I couldn't keep my mouth shut. I tell these people what I think about the way they treat people. So there are some people in the world that don't like Peter Sanders because of that. But well, that's the way I am.
Yeah. Well, I think we can apply that to any politics in the world, like as
Yeah.
long as somebody else doesn't get hurt. Fair enough. Let's go to the art itself. Let's go to Taekwondo itself. So, in all the years that you've been practicing, what is the biggest change within Taekwondo that you've actually seen?
Well, I think the scientific way of treating the sine wave. Basically, the sine wave is nothing new. You know, if you walk, you bend your knee. Basically, you're using sine wave with everything you do with your body. You know, but nowadays you see it's more about the science of the sine wave. You have to do this and this so the sine wave is correct. Everybody basically has to do the same to do the sine wave correct. But we are all different people, you know. Our bodies are different, our weight is different, everything is different. So basically, I think there's too much emphasis today on only the sine wave. Well, that's not Taekwondo. It's part of Taekwondo, you know. And when I see people performing patterns, tool, for example, I see a lot of people just doing a figure like a robot. This is how it should be done. But there's no real power. There's no real emotion in it. It's always say there's an imaginary opponent when you do a pattern. But I can see in very few people's eyes that there is an opponent there. It's just emotion. That's it, you know. And that's, I think, the difference with the Taekwondo when we started. It was hard. It was tough. 100% of the people that came to training came to train. Yeah. Nowadays people come because they don't like it at home. Yeah. Because they have a friend training. Because well, there's nothing else to do. Oh, I like the tobok with the belt. Many reasons to go there, you know. And in our beginning times, so let's say 1970, 1980, if there's 50 people in the hall, 50 people came to train as hard as they could. So there's a little different. But I don't say that's wrong, because that's the need of this time, you know. Yeah. Many reasons to come and train, to lose some weight, to feel good, to look better, or whatever. For me, that's all legal reasons to choose a martial art. Why not? Yeah. Feel secure, self-defense, etc., etc.
Yeah. So, looking at the sine waves and the emphasis on the different things that you've seen so far, what would you say is your biggest vision for the future of ITF HQ and ITF HQ Taekwondo in the doyangs that are associated with us?
Yeah. Well, I would like, nowadays people are using iPhones or whatever, computers, etc., more and more and more. But they lose the feeling for many things, but also the feeling for themselves, for their body, you know. Mm-hmm. Who am I? What can my body do? What can't it do, etc. So what I would love to come back into Taekwondo is people to feel what they're doing. Not doing things because they see it like a copy machine. Oh, I see you doing this, so that's how. No, what are you feeling? What's your body doing? What do your muscles do, you know? I spoke about the imaginary opponent. Imagine that he's there, you know, really fight the guy to your left with your low block, you know. Bring back some of that emotion into Taekwondo. I think that's the biggest gain we can make. If I compare it nowadays with, for example, karate, if you see karate kata, you know, I think it's 10 times more beautiful than what we do with our patterns. But if you do them correct, there's no difference. They're both beautiful, you know. Yeah. And they're both effective.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So when you talk like this, it brings me to the question of Do. People do martial arts. I think at least I do martial arts. I do Taekwondo because I find that there is, of course, a very intense physical sort of component to the art, but there's also a very intense spiritual component to it. And we of course we've spoken at length about Do. So how do you feel about the idea of Do? Like, what is your idea of Do? How would you introduce the spiritual part into Do Youngs?
Well, for me, dough is a little bit like I don't know if I told you before, but it's like a glass filling. You know, every day I train, every day I teach, every day I learn. This glass fills up a little bit more, and there's no top. It's never full. Because it's not like now it's full. I can't learn anything anymore. No, dough is filling that glass with everything around. For example, Taekwondo, this martial art, and not because you want to fill it, you want to do it. It's like Zen Buddhism. If I read this Zen book, I don't read the Zen book because I want to learn something. I just read the book.
Yes.
And I read it again, and I read it again, and something happens to me. This what's written here will change my being. So all this together to me is a Do. It brings you on a different level than only the physical level. Only the technique, etc., etc. And for me that's the same in life. Do is in your life too. How you treat your children. Do is at your job, your work situation. Do is that's that little extra, that soul of what you're doing.
So what would you tell a child? So my daughter is 12 and she is a black belt in Taekwondo, and she is a child. What would you tell a child of 12 years old about this, about the feeling of Do, about the feeling of this glass being filled up? And as a student, as a Jeja, I mean it's teaching has of course another dimension to it. When you're an instructor, there is this pleasure of teaching somebody an art, and watching them grow in it. But as a Jeja, what would you tell a child about Do? How would you explain it to them?
Difficult question, but I think I would call it pride. I would tell this kid, whatever you do, if you do it with pride, you work hard to reach the goal that you make, and you feel proud about it. This pride, that feeling, that's Do, because the pride will bring you further and further and deeper every time that you think, okay, I did something well, I reached the point. And a kid doesn't make these, doesn't have all these goals, but just doing today what you want to do as good as you can, the best way, and the feeling when you reached that day, that goal, it makes you proud, and that pride feeling, to me, that's Do. That's what I do every day. When I do something, I'm proud about the fact that I really want to do is correctly, the right way, the right power, etc., etc. So I think the word pride would be a good word for that.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. I have another question for you. So martial arts tends to be quite a male-dominated field.
Yes.
And, we have this vision in our heads about all of these brave, strong men, with black belts, and it's quite scary and all of this. So my question to you is, what is the role of women? What has the role of women been in the past of Taekwondo? And how do you see the role of women, for example, or, maybe any other minority groups? I mean, we're talking about women, I know that there is a disabled Taekwondo, but let's talk about women first. What is the role of women that you see in the future?
Well, that's a different role than from the past, because women in the past were brought up as, being less than men. They were different. The man works, the woman's at home, doing the dishes, doing the laundry, and that's it. And basically, a lot of that feeling is still within some women. So I have to care, I have to clean, etc., etc. But times changes. So nowadays it's much different. Women are more free and do the thing. But still, I think a lot of them are waiting for men to tell them, okay, take my hand, I guide you, And what I like nowadays is, I don't know if you know Master Natasha Manivaki from Greece, She's one of those women, and Grandmaster Sutherland from Scotland, she passed away. also one of those women that really have the power and the strength to take your hand, not as I guide you, but let's do it together, you know.
Yeah.
So, and I think if they, because they planned a seminar this year here in Holland, if they do it the right way, they can really mean something for women. But again, then it shouldn't be led or structured or guided by men, you know. They also asked me if I can come as a man, come there and said, and I still think about it, but basically I would say I shouldn't. It's their thing. Let them do it, you know.
Yeah. That's really interesting. So in that sort of vein, you know, for your students in your own Doyoung, what is your strategy as an instructor to reach out to? I mean, there will be students that you have that are very enthusiastic, that are very always on the forefront, always doing things and being loud, I guess, so being noticed. But women, in the other hand, they tend to be a little quieter. They tend to be a little bit more in the background, and let's just be quiet and just learn quietly. So not just women, but there are other people who do that as well. So what strategy do you employ as an instructor in your Doyoung to pull out the shyer people? The ones that are not so sure about themselves,
Yeah. Well, words are incredibly strong. Yeah, words are a weapon. If you look somebody in the eyes and say, I love you, it does something with something, yeah? With somebody, if you mean it. What I always do, for example, in the past, I used to teach at a lot of schools. So for kids 10, 12, 14 years old. They all these cities around here, they ask me for their sports day and so those kind of things. And what I always do, let's say I have about 20 children, and we train a little bit, and in the end we start kicking on the targets, and put them in line, and then I have them kick, and they'll kick, and then in the end I say, okay, now I do the championships, who kicks the hardest. So I start again with kicking, bah, 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 bah. And in the end, then I say, okay, you know who the winner is? So all these kids are silent and looking at you, and who's the winner? And for me, the winner is always the thickest girl or the smallest boy, yeah, that nobody talks to or looks at. I said the winner is her, and when you see the face, then you just save the life. It could be that strong,
Yes.
Because you see people really changing. When I was at the Taekwondo Hall of Fame, inaugurated in America. At the event, they asked me, Master Sanders, what makes your teaching different from others? I said, I don't know. I'm just who I am. So my wife was there too. She said, oh, you give me the microphone. Yeah. So she told me, what's the difference is that Peter always teaches out of positivity. So if a kid kicks, he never says it's not good. He always says it's good, but if you turn your leg a little bit more, it's even better, Yeah. That's teaching from positivity. And that means that people are growing because, they get stronger and stronger every day, And that's not only with children, also with older people. Everybody loves a compliment. Everybody loves if you say, okay, you're doing great, great effort, but if you do a little like this, then it's even more and even better or even stronger. Everybody loves it,
Yeah. Wonderful. Yeah. One last question, sir. If you could tell me very simply, what is your vision and what do you intend to do for the future as the Grandmaster in the Netherlands and for ITF HQ?
Well, I try to get people work together more. We are not a organization like, for example, the ITF Netherlands or other Karatebond Nederland or whatever. No, we are a free organization with free clubs. They're free to do what they want. They're not organized the way the others are. No, we can choose whom we work with. If I take my iPhone, I call everybody or send a message, and I have 10 or 20 clubs I can work with. Different than in the past, and what I would love to work on, and I'm working on already, is to create a environment where people really want to join, not join as a member, but join in training together, doing it together,
Yeah.
And that's basically what we want to try and produce the quality that makes you choose to come and train with us. And not only the quality, also the atmosphere, the will to be there, to be friends, to drink coffee together, to talk about problems, to talk about ideas, to talk about the future. Do it together. I don't want to be the grandmaster to be up there and say, oh, I'm the grandmaster and you all are under me. No, I want to be the grandmaster that is there next to you, help you, because I think that's our task. I'm nothing more than a teacher in the school. They call me grandmaster, yeah, but what's the difference? I try to teach you something, I try to help you. That's the teacher in school too. We don't call him a grandmaster, do we?
Well,
yeah.
You are such an inspiration, sir.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, Grandmaster. I know that we're all really keen to see what the future of ITFHQ holds, and I'm very, very excited to see how far we will come under your leadership. And also, thank you all for your attention. And for more information, you can find us on Facebook, ITFHQ. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.